Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today I did a little bit of testing on serrated blades from different multi-tools and multi-tool manufacturers. Those included Leatherman, Victorinox, Gerber, SOG, and I think I had one or two, I think it was just one off-brand one in there. I really wanted to see for myself which multi-tool had the best serrated blade functionality, and there's a lot of different styles here that we're looking at, but I will tell you that everything in this group that's on the table now made it into the A group. They all did really, really well. In fact, every single one of the Leathermans that was tested made it into the A group. Every single one of the Victorinox that were tested made it into the A group. Very, very good serrated blades on those multi-tools. SOG has one or two that made it into the A group. Gerber only had one, and it's surprisingly, it's not one of their newer models. They had one older model that actually made it into Group A. It did really well on this test, where some of the others kind of fell back. Now I'm going to roll in some footage here to kind of show you how each of these things performed, and then at the end of this I actually picked what I felt like were the 5 best, and I put them up against one another because there's one here that stands out head and shoulders above the rest. And maybe it's not head and shoulders, but it is noticeably better than the others for serrated blade functionality. And I just wanted to see how well it performed when I went up in size. Now I went into a 5/8 blended rope, which is about the size rope that I usually cut on a job site. Is what I use my particular serrated blade for. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first one up is the Leatherman P4, and the Leatherman P4 did really well. It made it into Group A, and a lot of times with these smaller serrated blades, the shorter ones, as long as they're really sharp, and they usually can do really well. And oftentimes I don't really knock in any multi-tool if it has a shorter serrated blade, so long as it functions correctly. Next one up was a rebar, another that's a little bit shorter than some of the rest, did really well as well. Next one was the Super Tool 300. The Super Tool 300 was one of the better ones. It really, really did well, and it was a solid A for sure. Next up was the Leatherman Surge, my personal favorite, and it also was a solid A. Did exceptionally well, as I knew it would. The next one up is the Charge G10 or Charge Plus with G10 handle scales. Now you can substitute any of the Charge models or the Leatherman Wave in its place, because they all have, on the serrated portion of their blades, they all have exactly the same pattern. So substitute any Charge model or the Wave model here. Did really well, solid A on that one as well. Next one was the Ozark Trail Multi-Force, and the Ozark Trail really started falling back. It landed in the B group. It was pretty much a solid B. It doesn't have the same functionality as a Wave or Charge does. It just doesn't. Next tool was the Leatherman OHT, and surprisingly this one did pretty well. I was kind of impressed with how well it handled cutting rope with the serrated blade. Did exceptionally well, even considering it's a much shorter blade. The next one was the Leatherman Signal. This was also a surprise to me. I kind of I rant a little bit on half serrated blades. I just don't like them. I just don't. Now, while it doesn't necessarily take away from the serrated blade portion of functionality, oftentimes I just would rather have a full-length standard blade or plain blade. I will say that the Signal did very well, though. I was really impressed. It also was a solid A. Next one was the Skeletal. The Skeletal is also a half serrated, and it did really well as well. Next one was the Leatherman Juice XE6. The XE6 performed really, really well. Some of these smaller blades were kind of impressive. They really were. The next one was the Leatherman Wingman, also a half serrated blade, and it performed well as well. It landed in the A group. The Swiss Tool was next, and it was really good. It definitely a strong A, followed by the Spirit XC. The XC did incredibly well as well. Some people make fun of that blade because of its, they call it the butter knife blade. I got to tell you, that thing is really, really sharp. It really, really worked well. Next was the SOG Power Assist, which is one of the SOGs that made it in the A group. Now it has a bit different of a pattern on its serrated blade design. Sometimes patterns that are like this don't really do well on rope, but this one did. It did really well, and it's a solid A. Now the next SOG is the Power Play. The Power Play did not fare nearly as well. It fell back into the B group. Next up was the little SOG Power Pint, which I've reviewed, and I really like that multi-tool, and I was really impressed with how well the serrated blade worked on the little Power Pint. Next was the Suspension NXT. Now the NXT did not fare well. It just did not. It actually landed back into the C group for me. It probably a high C. It just does not function as smoothly as these other multi-tools do. The next tool was the, let me see, where am I here? Oh, the MP600. Now the MP600 is the older model Gerber that I was talking about that made it into the A group. It did really, really well. I was really impressed with the MP600. Next tool was the Gerber suspension. Now the suspension has that very short, stubby, and it's a bit thicker of a blade too, and it just did not perform well. It fell back into the C group for me as well. Just did not perform that great. The next one was the Gerber truss. Now the truss, on the other hand, it was noticeably better than the NXT and the suspension both, and I put that into the B group. I thought it did pretty good actually. And then the last multi-tool that we have today is the Gerber center drive. And the center drive is going to fall back into the C group as well. The serrated blade on there just does not work very well at all. And I think it has something to do with that coating, because the blade design, the shape looks pretty decent. It's just that they really should have done something a little bit different with that. I wish they would not put that black oxide coating. I don't know what it is about that coating that they put on there, but their suspension, or the super tool, goodness gracious, the center drive does not cut very well for its serrated blade functionality. Now after my initial testing, I picked what I felt like were the 5 best for the serrated blade functionality. Those are the Swiss tool, the Power Assist, the Skeletal RX, the Super Tool 300, and the Leatherman Surge. Now, the one that I have not mentioned yet is the Skeletal RX. It actually took the top spot. This serrated blade is so incredibly good. It is a step above the others. It is noticeably smoother in its functionality than even these larger multi-tools. And you'll notice that for the remainder of the ones that I felt like were the best, they're all large frame multi-tools. They're all 4.5-inch frame multi-tools or larger. Normally, these longer serrated blades are going to perform better in most cases. Now, that's not to say that some of these other A groups, they are what I classified into the A group, they all cut incredibly well. They really did. And the difference between these 4 here is really, really close. Super, super close. The way I put them in was, I think the Super Tool 300 was the best of these 4, then the Surge, then the Power Assist, and then the Swiss tool came in last. Now I do want to stress that the difference between 2 and 4 here is so close that unless you were testing them side by side like I was, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That's how close and how good each one of them is. However, the Skeletal RX definitely has the top spot. It's just that much smoother. The ones that I have on the table now, the SOG Power Pint, the Leatherman Juice XE6, the OHT, the Leatherman Signal, and the Leatherman Wingman, are the multi-tools. Their serrated blade functionality impressed me the most. These 2 on the end, and also some of those other serrated, half serrated blades, I was actually really impressed at how well they cut rope. They did really, really well, and to the point where I might want to reconsider how hard I am on half serrated blades. For rope functionality, cutting rope, they did really, really well. They were really impressive. Then the OHT. The OHT is the smallest or the shortest serrated blade of the large frame multi-tools, and it just goes to show that even these short serrated blades, for what they're used for, are actually pretty good. It's to the point where I don't mind having a smaller serrated blade in some different multi-tool knife designs. In fact, I think that scissors should be outbound, and if they have to incorporate this tool on an interior tool where it'd be a little bit shorter than some of those other knife blades, I think I'd be okay with that. But the two most impressive were the XE6. For its small blade, it did incredibly well. It really did. But the absolute most impressive to me was the smallest blade out there that we tested today, and that was the SOG Power Pint. This is definitely the shortest of all the blades, but it cut so incredibly well. Now, I've done a review on this multi-tool, and I really do like it. I'm liking it more and more the more I test it. I think it is an exceptionally good multi-tool for a light carry EDC that's going to be in this juice size frame, this 3.5-inch frame. I think it just performed phenomenally well. And I was actually most impressed by this multi-tool. The others were also impressive for various different reasons, but the little SOG stood out for me. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this comparison to kind of highlight who has the best serrated blade. I actually think a lot of them are really, really close. And again, unless you're testing them side by side, a lot of them you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. Definitely the Skeletal RX though, top dog for sure. My name's Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. If you like this video, I would appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button, and I will see you in the next one.